Okay, guys, so I am still on holidays overseas in California. Much more difficult than I expected to get work done. It's been fascinating and extremely busy, so my time has been very, very limited. However, I just wanted to quickly show where I've got to with this framework, SASS-based framework working with AT or Advanced Thema. Maxime, I think in version 1.07 or 1.08, released a couple of filters, so PHP filters to enable you to bring in arrays of CSS variables, which will appear in the AT variable pickers, and also automatically import any classes into bricks from a from a array. What it doesn't do is pass a CSS file to be able to create those variables and those um, utility classes. There are some facilities in AT. There's one that imports a CSS file and gives you the utility classes, but there's also one that will import a set of variables, but you need to create a JSON file for that. What I wanted was to have a framework like this. So I've just got a very basic framework here, which I'll talk through as we go. SASS framework. I'm using Scripts Organizer. You could just as easily use WP Codebox or WordPress SASS or Node SASS, whatever you want to use. And the idea is that this is my framework. I've also got some variables which are going to simplify the whole framework with basically all you need to do is change a few variables. So your sizes, your header heights at different breakpoints, your colors, your form input variables, etc. So this is kind of like having a UI like you get with automatic CSS, but you've got full control over this because you're directly changing the SASS variables. So for me, it's a more flexible way of working. So I like the idea of it. So the idea is we change these, hit the save or update, and automatically all of our utility classes appear in bricks, and all of our CSS variables appear in the AT variable pickers. That's what I want, nice and simple. I'm going to give you an example straight away here. So if I go into just going to pick one here. So go into this here. If I edit with bricks, and I'm just going to pick any element here. Now if I use a variable picker here, so this is V here from AT's variable picker. If I click that, these two here are from AT, and I'll lift those there because I want to use their clamp, which works really, really well. All these ones, X offsets, X size, X radius, all comes from my framework. So you see here I've got an X size of 4XL. Now if we go to my framework here, into my variables, just going to find that, and I had a 5XL. We're going to make that say 35 rem, and I hit save on that. Just going to bring this down a little bit in size. I've got something in the way here. The update. Okay, all I've done is edited my variables partial and added a 5XL size of 35. Now if I go back to the builder here and do a follow 5, okay, go back to any element. Now if I use the variable picker now, I now have in my X sizes, I've got a 5XL. So, and it's under a category of 5 of X size. So that's what I want. I want to be able to just change my framework just by changing some variables in here, adding some colors, adding some sizes, change that. Or if I want to add some functionality to it, all I have to do is in my framework, I just add some functionality in my framework. So you can see example here. I've got this is something I've come up with. You need a plugin for this, which I'll go through, because AT doesn't currently have this functionality, but hopefully Maxime will build it in and you won't need my plugin anymore. So all I'm doing is adding a comment block above my variables here of an @at-category, giving it a name, and then each of these variables here, it's iterating through, it's creating a x size dash dash variable, and that's what gave us this here. So it's very, very powerful, very flexible, very, very powerful. Now the second part of this is we look at the framework again. I'm getting lost in my tabs here. If I look at the framework here, down the bottom of this framework, I've got some utilities. So these are all variables up here. Actually, that's the utilities there. So all of these are CSS variables, which is my preferred way of working. I use BEM naming mostly for what I do, and I use variables to style that. So utility classes have their place, but most 95% of the time I'll use CSS variables, not utility classes. However, there are times where you want it to be nice and simple. So we've got this X relative, X isolate, couple of display utilities. I've got an image background wrapper, image as background wrapper, and image as background image. Now, what this is I prefer to not use CSS backgrounds because you can't control what those images are easily at your different breakpoints. You can, in a way, with bricks using the breakpoints and then changing images, all that sort of stuff. But I like this way here because what it does, it allows you to get a box. It could be a container, it could be a section, or whatever it is. You add this utility to it, and that sets it up to have an image inside it as a background. We put an image straight underneath that. We add this to it, and what it does, it automatically fits that image to that size, sets the background object fit to cover, and it looks and behaves like a CSS background. But we've got our source set, so we're going to get different images at different viewport sizes, and we've also got an alt tag, which is great for SEO. So both of those are great for SEO. So this is just utilities that I use. We created some box shadows up here, but I've just added some, where are we? Here, basically adding some utility classes for box shadows. All of our colors, we're creating buttons with all these colors, and I'll run through the documentation on this. And then we've got for my WS form, if I add XWS form to a WS form, basically what I've done is I've brought up some forms, I've copied the styles from there, put it underneath this prefix here of XWS form, and then updated some utilities to use our framework variables. So that's pretty much all there is to that. Typical stuff here. Some of the stuff I've actually borrowed from Automatic CSS. I love what Kevin's done with ACSS. I just wanted something really simple to work with, advanced thema that was extremely controllable by me. So that's why I've done this. It's a great reference for me, the Automatic CSS, and I think Kevin and his boys are doing a great job with that. So anyway, so typical stuff here, just some hidden accessibility for screen readers, etc. A couple of animation things. So I've got to animate on hover small and elevate on hover. I'll show you what those are. If I go to this page here that I've got, and we'll go down to the bottom here, we've got a box here. If I roll my mouse over, you can see the border, the box shadow grows as well as it lifting vertically. And that's also got a glass effect border on it as well. The next one has just got the elevating, so we've just got the box shadow growing down the bottom. And these two here just have a move on hover. So these just move. These have the elevate utility class, which actually grows the box shadow underneath it as it moves as well. So that's all there is to that. Now, I've also then got, which you can't see when I zoom in this properly. So let's get back here. Okay. One issue I have with this scripts organizer is when you're zooming in, sometimes you can't scroll to the bottom of your code. So I've got a class here called BF for Bricks Forge, GSAP scrub to 0, and that is really just a utility for basically for as a selector. So go back to here, you can see I've got, if I roll my mouse, see these images here, see how they're rotated and translated? And as I scrub, it gets to a certain point and they go back to 0. So all I've done is with my BricsForge, in fact, I want to quickly show you that. So with BricsForge up here, I have a timeline I've set up called return to 0. It uses that utility, so sorry, that selector. So the only reason I've got it in this framework, if I can find it again, the only reason I put it in here is so that it automatically appears in Bricks. You could type this into Bricks if you want, but this just automatically appears in the selector in Bricks. Okay, so what we're doing here is we're basically setting some controls here. So where do we want to scroll start? Where do we want to scroll end? Scrub value of 1. That's, I'm not going to go into GSAP here, but that's pretty much it. And then in our trigger, all we're doing is saying we want to go 2, and all my transforms, you can't, one thing I found with BricsForge is you can't put 0 in these. If you put 0 in these, it just doesn't do anything at all. It doesn't put the property in there. I'm just putting a very, very low number, 0.00001. So translate back to 0.00001. So what this is doing is whenever it sees an element that has that class on it, it tracks it using scroll trigger, and then it automatically translates all these translations back to 0. So what I do is with a image, for example, so if I go to this image, all I'm doing is adding the BF GSAP scrub to 0 class, and then on my transforms, I'm just setting some transforms on it to be -100 by 100 and a rotate Z of 10. That's all I have to do to that image, and then it will automatically track and go back to 0 as I do this. That's just a little utility trick. There might be others I'll come up with as well, but this is really just making my productivity really simple. So grab a image, at the ID level, change the transform, add this class to it, and there's my GSAP motion to move that image or box or whatever it is as at will. Right, so that's enough waffle on that. Now, I'm going to quickly look at the framework doc that I've just created here. Now, I will probably try and organise a live where we actually go through this with some people and get some questions answered, and maybe give me some feedback on what I need to improve. But what we'll do is we'll work through actually using this and seeing how it works, and then how productive it is with AT. And I think AT is absolutely brilliant. I think Maxime is brilliant. He's heading in a great direction. Having this facility just makes it even better for me. So, okay, about this framework, it's built on SASS, utilizing Scripts Organizer and Advanced Thema. Okay, all you have to do is modify your settings. You just modify the SASS variables in the partial called variables and settings, or you can add to your framework, whatever you like. So the colors, as I said, I'm using a standard or primary, secondary action, accent, and shade. And yes, this is borrowed from automatic CSS. I'm now used to using that, and it makes sense to me to just keep using the same thing. So if you change any of these, then you have to change your SASS in your framework. So really, ideally, you just keep doing that. So I'm going to show you quickly where that is. Go into Bricks and AT color palettes. We just create a color palette, primary, action, secondary, accent, and shade. That's all we have to do. And in the settings, just switch on your enable shades. Right, and then we're all done, ready to go. Okay, and I'll show you a little bit further down where this is really useful. All right, now you do need to use my plugin, which I've got a link to. And the reason you need my plugin is because AT has all these facilities, but it doesn't currently have the facility to grab a CSS file, pass it, and then automatically bring in your CSS variables into the variable picker, and the classes or utility classes into Bricks in one foul move. So what I want to be able to do is have it so that and this is the plugin here, all I want to do, this is a bit of commenting on how it works. All I want to do is get my scripts organizer, WP code box, whatever, create an external file. Here's my link to that file, and that's it. That's all I have to do, so that every time I save a change to my SASS, it automatically goes into the AT variable pickers and automatically appears as classes in bricks. That's all I need to do. And this is using 2 filters that Maxime's made available for that. Okay, so there is a link to it. I'll put it in the description of this video as well. That's pretty much it. All right. So now what we want to do is we want to keep it simple. I think Maxime is adding so many features at the moment that this might be a little while before he does this, but I hope at some point he makes this happen so we don't need a plugin. But for the moment, we do. All right, so variables, all of the variables in the framework are prefixed with dash dash, x for external, and all the classes are prefixed by dot x dash. Okay, and again, the SASS, it's just SASS. So it could be anything, Node SASS, WP SASS, WP code box, scripts organizer, whatever you use, as long as you're using SASS, this framework will work. You could also just create standard CSS if you wanted to, if you don't want to go through the process of understanding and learning SASS. I recommend you do, because it's a lot easier than trying to create a lot of CSS. So that's the framework as far as those goes. Now, I've actually started documenting what my current framework is outputting. And this is the list here, so I'll probably make this available at some point as a separate site. This is my starter site that I'll be cloning out. I might make this available if people want it. Now, this has come down to whether people are going to use this or not. So basically, I create a CTA or call to action offset. So this is where you want overlapping. So in the, I don't think I've done it. No, I haven't. But let's say you wanted these as call to actions to overlap this hero. You want that to have a negative margin going into the hero, but then we also want to add some padding to that hero to allow for that overlap. So that's what these are for. So we've got a CTA offset and a CTA offset neg. So I would say in that case, we would add a CTA offset neg to these boxes here if they were calls to action to stick them up into the hero, and then we'd add the CTA offset to the padding on the bottom of this to push that padding down a bit so our spacing is all nice and tidy. Header height, that is something you measure. So you basically measure this height of this header here at all different breakpoints, put it into the variables, and that will automatically use a media query, mobile first media query, to change that variable depending on what your breakpoint is, and you can use that to clear your header if you're using a overlay header. All right. Again, here's our sizes. So typical size, I'm just doing them as fixed rem sizes. But I could put clamps in here, but I'm trying to keep this really, really simple. And AT already has a really good clamp system. So I'm keeping the font sizes in clamp in AT, and also some sizing in clamp in AT. The rest of it I'm doing with my framework. Okay. The radiuses, actually, I probably haven't explained that here, but the radiuses are basically referencing these size variables. And the reason I've done those as separate is so that you can override the radius variables without affecting the sizes. So if you wanted to change, I don't know why you would, but if you wanted to change your radius sizes to be different to your fixed sizes, you can change those by overriding. Box shadows, so I've got a small, medium, large box shadow. Grids, typical grids, X grid 1, which doesn't make sense, but it's because of these SASS iterating through all the numbers. So we've got a grid 2, which is typical repeat 2, min max 0, 1FR, through to 12. And then we've got a 1FR, 2FR, up to 1FR, 6FR. And then we've got the other way around, 2FR, 1FR, through to 6FR, 1FR. And we've got some colors here. Now, one of the shortcomings at the moment in AT is that they don't have transparencies. So all these colors here, if we go back to the colors, these colors here, they're all solid colors. There's no transparency. So there's no option here to create transparencies on those. So what I've done is I've just created so we can have some like glass effects and some opacity effects on backgrounds and borders. I've created from color white. So color white -2 has a 2% opacity. So 2, 5, 7, 10 through to 90 on white, and the same on black. If I quickly show you in the framework, where's my framework? Where is it? Find it from here. So my framework, my colors. Where are my colors? There we go. Couldn't find it for the life of me. There it is there. Okay, so I've just got a SASS map from 2, 5, 7, 10, 20 through to 90. And this SASS here is what creates all of these variables here. All right, so if we wanted to add say a 95, we just go comma 95, and that would give us a 95 here and a 95 there. So it's as simple as doing that, which is what I love about SASS. You can just so simply add and change things, and it affects multiple areas if you wanted to. All right, so that's the colors. I've got some variables for what I'm calling a glass border. And the glass border is, see around this monkey here, I've got a white 5-pixel border with a opacity of 30. So around the edge, I don't know if you can see it very well in this video, but you can kind of see this bird in the background appearing through that. So I'm giving that a name of glass. So that's a very simple way of doing it. And this is just an example of what kind of things you can create. So all I have to do is either in the borders in my custom CSS, add that border, or add the utility, which is further down. So I'm going to add a utility for this as well. And that adds a 5-pixel solid using the color white 30 from up here. Same with black animation. These are just for speeds, to keep our speeds consistent. Utility classes, again, we can use those border utility classes just by adding that class. I think that's what I did with this monkey. I just added the class to it. That's it. Typical stuff: display relative, display isolate. This is the background, images background wrapper. So add that to any box that you want to use an image like a CSS background, and then add that to the image itself. Clickable parent, which we won't go into. Box shadows that we can add as CSS classes. And then we've got these buttons here. So this is iterating through the buttons. Where's our buttons? Yeah, so we're iterating through all the colors. We're creating a button with that color, and then we're creating an alt version of that button with the color, and then we're creating an outline version of that as well. So with this and, it means it needs to have that as well. So it needs this this class here, and it needs that class here to be an outline. So this we want in this example here, we want a primary, but we want it outlined. We add both those classes. Okay, so what this is doing is, I think the primary, I've done so much with this, I can't remember where I'm at with it, but I think with the primary, what it does is it uses the primary color as the background, and then a very light color for the text. And the alt does the opposite. It uses a light color for the background and a darker color for the text. And then the outline does a transparent background, with the outline being the primary color in that case. So any of our colors we can use here just by adding those classes to buttons. All right, form, I'm only using WS form. I'm not even using the bricks forms at all, or any other form builder. I just love WS form. So I'm only doing this from my perspective. You'd add your own classes in there for what you want. So we add that to a WS form in order to use all our colors and borders and everything from our framework. We've got some accessibility stuff here. Move on, hover small, elevate on hover. I think I already showed you that, where we've got these down here. These are the elevates, and these are just the moves. And then we got this one here, which is our Bricks for GSAP scrub to 0, which I think I already showed you as well. So that's the document. So you can see here, it's a very limited, simple framework. And the reason for that is that's all it needs to be with Bricks, as far as I'm concerned. Now, we might add some more things in here, but we don't need a lot, because what we're doing with our framework is we're not trying to support Oxygen and Gutenberg and God knows what else. We're just doing this for Bricks. Bricks with AT. Okay, that's all we're doing, so it's very, very simple. Now, let's actually create something so I can show you what I mean. So I'm going to create a new page, and I'm going to call this test for video, if I can spell. Where is my edit with bricks? That's interesting. The button's gone for edit with bricks there. So if I get edit with bricks, a very simple page here. I'm using conditionals on displays. I won't go into that. That's a bunch of jet engine stuff I'm doing there. Okay, so you can see I've got a bunch of AT stuff enabled, so I can use these sections and whatnot from here, or I can just add a section, and that section automatically gives me my container. I could just as easily have done that from these AT utilities here. So here's my section, click on the section, here's my container. Okay, so first thing I'm going to look at is my setup. So the theme, if I look at my theme styles, and I've got a main theme, conditions is for everything. Into my typography, I've got my body is set to my AT font body. I'll explain that a little bit later. So the variable pickers for AT don't seem to work in here. I'm not sure why. They work everywhere else, but they don't work in the theme settings. So you've actually got to know what these are. I think you can actually, let me just try this. I think it's AT. If I just start typing, it does. So if I go font body, AT font body, yep, you can use the prefill or type ahead, whatever you like to call it, but there's no variable picker here for some reason. So I'm just setting it to Poppins 400 using AT font body. Okay, I'll show you where that is a little bit sooner, a little bit later. My headings, I'm not setting a font size on the heading, I'm just setting a default font. Now heading 1, I'm using AT font to Excel and setting my font weight to 700. Heading 2, AT font XL, and these are clamps. These are clamps from Excel. This is not from my framework, this is from from Advanced Sleeper. Heading 3, we're using AT font L. Heading 4, AT font M. And typography, AT font N for normal. Then we come down to heading 6. I don't think I've even set those. I have done that as AT font S. Okay, then we got the utility classes from Bricks for Hero. And that I've used my AT clamp 2XL and set my size to uppercase. And I've set my color to use my primary L5. Okay, and my lead, I've set that to AT clamp L and using my primary L4. So these are all relating back to AT, but you set your typography in Bricks in the actual theme. Okay, so this is why we can get away with using a lesser framework, because we're creating this specifically for Bricks, which you would not be able to get away with doing this for other systems as well. The only other thing I've changed in here is my element section. Where'd that go? I've used a clamp, AT clamp 3XL for my top and bottom. You can't read these very well in here, but it's AT clamp S for the sides. Okay. And that's my standard section where I've got some clamped spacing at the top and bottom and a smaller one on the sides. So like everything with Bricks, you can actually make these a little bit bigger. So if you don't have, for example here, so we've got 3XL, maybe you want that to be 4XL. Let's do it. Oops. Let's just refresh that. I've just messed it up. Okay, let's go back to our theme styles, element section. Okay, so we just want to link opposite sides. Let's change that to 4XL. Okay, and then we'll add a section. Why didn't that work? Fresh. Okay, so that did something strange. Do we have a 4XL? Ah, that's why it didn't work. So in AT, we don't have a 4XL, that's why. So we can either add a 4XL in AT, or we can do a calc. If I do calc, maybe 2.5 times 3XL. There we go. Maybe 1.5 times 2XL, and we'll just link those off to the sides. There you go. So 1.4 times 2XL, and we've got a bigger spacing now as our default. What our or maybe 1.2, so it's a little bit less. So now we've got 1.2 times our AT clamp 3XL. So we've still got the clamp from AT, but we've made it a little bit bigger by multiplying it out here. So we can do that, or we could add a 4XL in AT, which I'll show you a little bit later. So there's our basic setup. Let's just chuck a title in there, and we'll let's make this one our hero lead. So let's change the type to a lead. Actually, we'll make that a hero. Let's just duplicate that, and we'll make that our lead. Okay, let's grab the section, and we're going to add our utility class for background. So I'm going to type image, and image as background wrapper. That's set up for an image now. If I add an image in there now, and just put that straight up under the section, and let's pick maybe these people. There's people. Insert that. We're going to add a image as background image. So now we've got an image that looks like a CSS background, but it's an actual image. And that gives us a lot of extra benefits. Okay, so there's that. Now let's say we want some overlay on that. If we go back to our section, we deselect our class, style, overlay, and we want this to appear on the overlay, add a color. We can use our colors here, so we can use that color there if we want to. I'm going to use something a bit different. I'm going to use a var. This is something, unfortunately, there's no picker in here as well. I'm going to use a --x color, black, and let's make that say 70, dash I should say. Okay, so we get a 70% opacity black. Okay, and just go back to there, and we're just going to duplicate that, and on a second color, go down, and we'll make that say 10%. So we've gone from a dark black to almost white down there. Maybe we want less, make it 5. Okay, so whatever values we've got, so there we go. How simple is that? We've just added a heading with an image as a background, and we've set our colors to be, for our opacity, for our black to be consistent. Okay, so wherever we change that, we can update that. All right, so there's a simple heading. All right, now let's look at our grids. So here's a heading. I'm going to add a block to this container, and I'm going to stick that up there and put my headings inside that block. The two headings are inside a block now. Okay, on this container, I'm going to turn that into a grid. We get our content, we make it a grid, and I want to have some large clamp spacing. This is AT spacing, so we want to clamp L, clamp XL, and then we're going to add our grid template columns, and we're going to use the grids from our utility. We scroll down, here's our grids. Let's say we wanted a grid 2. Okay, so now we've got a 2-column grid with a clamp XL spacing. We can change that to be a fixed spacing by using our spacing variables from our framework. So normal, medium, 2XL, XL, and that'll be a fixed spacing. All right, so let's leave that as it is. So we're going to go, that's going to leave that as the clamp. There's a heading on the left, and we've got something on the right that we need. So I'm going to add another block to this container. And inside that block, I'm going to add an image. And in that image, we're going to use let's use the monkey again. Why not? Everybody loves a monkey. We've got a monkey inside there. All right, and we'll use the glass border white. That some transparency. Sorry, some where's our border? Let's use one of our radiuses. So we use our variable picker. The X radius, small, normal, medium, large. You can see it changing as we roll over. This is AT doing this. So we've changed that. Let's give it a bit of a tilt. So we're going to style and transform, and maybe give it a 1 degree tilt. So just slightly tilted, give it a bit of effect. Okay. Simple as that. All right. Now, if we wanted to change this at a breakpoint, let's say at this breakpoint, we don't want that to be a mobile breakpoint. We want the container. We want that to go down to 1FR. Okay, there we go. Simple, 1FR, or we could use, I don't know why you would use this, but you can go into your variable picker, go to your grid, and just go 1. Now we've got a 1, too much spacing, change your spacing. All right, so we now got our responsive grid very, very simply. All right, now, the other thing we can do here is go back to our, and by the way, I love what Maxime's done here. We've actually got this marker to indicate whether you've got any changes on any of these breakpoints. Let's say we want this monkey to be a little bit bigger. So what we can do here is use our grid and go, we want the monkey, so on the right-hand side, we want it to be twice the size as left-hand side. Or maybe we want the heading to be bigger than the monkey. So we're going to go, we want the heading to be 2 and the monkey to be 1. So just as you can see there, just by rolling over these things, we can change how these things are going to work in sizing. Okay. Now there's an alternative to this, which gives you a lot more control, and that is using a 12-column grid. So we're going to change this grid to be a 12-column grid. It doesn't look right. That's because we need to do a bit of work here. So what we're going to do is go to our block for our heading, and we're going to set our column to go from 1 to, say, 6. And then we're going to set the grid row to 1. That's not enough. We can make it longer there. So let's go 1 to 8. Okay, 1 to 9. All right, and our monkey is really small now, right? So what we want to do now is probably remove that spacing. So let's go to the container, get rid of the spacing because we don't want spacing here. So we don't want any spacing. So we've just got basically a scaffolding. And I'm going to make this heading a bit more. So I'm going to, okay, on my heading and cool. All right, now what we want to do is change this block for the monkey. We want to tell it, we want to start that from, say, 5 to the end, and we also want that on row 1. Now we've got an overlapping grid. So all I have to do is go back to my first block and say we want to go to the style and set the, where are we, the style layout, set the ZNX on that, be 1, and that sticks the heading on top of the monkey. All right. Don't like that, too much overlap, that's fine. Let's go back to the container. It's not the container, go back to the block, and we're going to make that less. So the content here, we're going to make that 1 to, say, 8. All right, 1 to 8, and then we can leave the monkey as there. So we want to move the monkey across a little bit, go to the block, and we go from 6 to end. All right, so how simple is that to have overlapping grids with full control over it? And if you want to see more about this, just go into the front end and turn on your inspector. I go to the inspector section, hit that section there, is the container for the grid, and go to layout and switch on our grid overlays, and we can see exactly where these things are. So there's our 1 through to, what do we make the first one? I think we made the first one 1 through to 8, and the second one we made from, where we go from 6 to the end. So that's a lot of control with very, very little effort. Okay, so that's really what this is all about. It's really making it as simple as possible to work with. Right, so that's our grid. Where is it? We've lost it. Get back here. All right, so that is that. And then if we want to align these, we can go to the container and align everything to the center. Okay, so that aligns in the center. So I'm liking this. I think it's a really, really simple way to work. I like the fact that we can just change our SASS framework. We then have all of our variables that we've created in our SASS framework appear in this picker here. I like the fact that all of the classes we created automatically appear here. They'll have X in front of them. All the ones with X in front of them are coming from our framework. Okay, so it's and if as I change my framework, these will automatically appear in here. Now, as of AT 1.0.9, they're actually automatically locked, so you can't accidentally stuff them up when you're editing. And I think it works really, really well. So I'm happy with this. I think the workflow works for me. Actually, I did say sorry. I was going to show you one more thing, didn't I? Sorry. I'm going to add another section at the bottom here. And inside that section, I'm just going to add another container. And that container, I'm going to turn that into a grid. And I'm going to make that a spacing of, let's do a size L. And we'll make it a 3-column grid. Okay, I'm going to add a block in there. That work. Did, and that block. I normally use BEM for this, but so forgive me for not doing that. This is a very quick demonstration. So I'm going to add the utility class of Elevate. Okay, I'm going to add some padding in there, so my layout. Oh, there we go. Get rid of the class because it's locked, which is a good thing that Maxime has just recently done. Link all sides, and let's put some spacing. Size of normal. Actually, let's use S all the way around. Inside there, let's add a heading, and we'll add some rich text. Very simple. Let's add a background color of just use a light color there. All right, now we've got something simple. I'm just going to duplicate this a couple of times. Let's say these are calls to action, right? So what we need to do is on the section, we need to get rid of the content style layout. Let's get rid of the top padding, so we're going to set that to 0. Okay, actually, we're not going to set it to 0. Yeah, we're going to set 0. And on the margin top, we're going to set that to use, I think it's going to type NEG. Yes, it does. CTA offset negative. Right, so now we've set our CTA's offset to negative here. We've got a problem. We've got a problem because this spacing is now wrong. So we've got lots of spacing between the top of this image and the header, but our calls to action are using up some of our spacing for the bottom of this. So how we do that? I'm going to copy that variable there. I'm going to go to my section up here. Actually, we'll give it a name. We'll call it hero. And on that section there, we've got, I think we had a clamp 3XL for the bottom. Let's have a look there. So we've got padding bottom, and I think it was clamp 3XL by default. Yep, that is it. So if we go to 3XL, I think we did it times 1.5 because we're playing around with it. Yeah, we did. So if I add that clamp 3XL, and I think it was times 1.4 or something, but that's something we can look at. Now that's not working for us. So what we're going to do is change that to a calc. Paste in that call to action. Actually, what the call to action offset, not the negative, plus the current offset. That didn't work for us. Calc, var CTA offset plus there we go. So that's closer. I did add some extra padding in the defaults by it. So now that's all we have to do. So in a nutshell, we go to our section. For this section here, we set our top padding to 0. We set our top margin to the CTA offset neg. And then in the hero, what we're doing is we're adding the CTA offset, not the neg, to whatever we had as the default for that. And now we have our offsets all set up correctly. So we've got our spacing at the top there, spacing at the bottom to the CTA, and then these are nicely aligned. So really simple. I'm loving this. I think productivity-wise, as I use this, it's going to get easier and easier. This is believe it or not, this is a quick run through. There's so much more you can do with this. I think I'm going to leave it here. I'll put a link to my plugin in the footer. In the description. It also has my example framework SASS there that you can play with. And then what I think I'll do is I'll put a call out, and if anyone wants to do a live to walk through this, make some suggestions, ask some questions, we'll organise to do that next week when I'm back in Australia. So hopefully this is something you enjoy, and look forward to chatting to you guys next week. Okay, thank you. Bye.